Hi, everybody. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci, and welcome to the program. You're watching the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Make sure you rate and leave a comment after you download the apps for Zingo TV for iOS and Android devices. They're available on Google Chromecast, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now joining us, as usual, David Morassutti, and the Toronto Argonauts communication manager and play-by-play announcer. You might know him, folks, Mike Hogan. Mike, welcome to the program. David, of course, always welcome.
My pleasure, gentlemen. I use that term loosely.
Okay, well, we accept it loosely. So basically, here it is. Finally, it's happened. The CFL season has started. You know, Mike, we all looked for information, looked for things to talk about. In your case, as much as anyone, more importantly, you're communicating a lot about what may or may not happen. It must feel really good to be able to finally reach to the point where you get to see what's going on and actually get involved in live action.
Yeah, it was tough last year because I thought the front office did a really nice job of assembling players in the offseason and improving the roster from 2019. Yet we never got a chance to see how that was going to turn out on the field. And then, you know, Mike Clemens, John Murphy, and, Vince Magri and Alex Russell all got together, improved that roster even more, and we were all curious to see what that hard work was going to look like. And with week one in Calgary, a victory in a very tough place to play against, I guess, arguably the league's best quarterback, it was a pretty exciting, pretty well-deserved win.
It was, and the biggest thing you hope for from your big players is that they make big plays, and they did for you. That's the most important thing you can rely on. It's great to have great players. As everyone noted, when your team got built, there were a lot of players who were very high profile, and there were even some people who wondered about how the Toronto Argonauts will end up under the cap.
Well, so far so good. I think a lot of that quote-unquote salary cap discussion was overblown because a lot of guys came here for a lot less money than I think people were expecting. Enoch Mwamba, for example, came home to play, get his foundation started. And, with his family situation where, they've got he's got a wife who lost her mother to COVID last year. She has a sister that needs some help around the home. So, he wanted to come home and not spend 6 months away, or I guess 4 months away from him this year, and just wanted to be in Toronto. So there were some instances, maybe not that dramatic, of people who Shane Ray just wanted to play football again. So it's not like it was costing us $500,000 to get him to come here and play. But yeah, the pieces of the puzzle look pretty good on Saturday. Still a lot of work to do, but you mentioned the best players making the big plays, and McLeod Bethel Thompson did it time and time again. Eric Rogers with a great block and a great 2-point catch late in that game. Curly Gittins Jr., Ricky Collins, Breskeson. They all made really big plays on offense. Defensively, they didn't get to Bo in terms of sacks, but they pressured him all night. And some of the guys in the secondary, Shaq Richardson maybe specifically made some plays. The linebacking core looked good. Boris Beatty with a game winner and a 54-yard field goal. So, it's a lot of guys did a lot of things really, really well in Calgary, but there's still a lot of work to do.
David?
Yeah, first off, it was just great to see football back on the field. And, it's just funny getting used to the players and the numbers and where they're going to go on the field. It was good to get at least to watch practice and get all that in. But you could tell, yeah, there's some work, tweaks to be done, especially with no preseason. But you guys got off to a great start with the touchdown on the first drive, which I think that was great for your momentum and getting a rhythm on offense for sure. And even for Calgary, there were parts in the game where I'm like, this doesn't look like the Calgary Stampeders that we're used to seeing. And it kind of goes to show what the time off maybe did for that. And a lot of new pieces on offense and guys that had to play in elevated roles than what they were used to playing in the past. So, but you guys made it a very entertaining game right until the end. So can't really ask for much more than that.
Any way you get a victory, and, Coach Dinwiddie said during the week that he didn't care what the final score was as long as they had one more point than Calgary. They turned out having 3 more points, but that's a big 2 points in the schedule. And Winnipeg did the Argos a little bit of a favor by beating Hamilton. Montreal had the bye week. Ottawa, a lot of people sold them short. They look, especially on defense, they look pretty good against Edmonton. So this could be a really interesting season, and with a shortened season, it's more of a sprint than a marathon. So next up, maybe the best team in the league back to back. So it doesn't get easier than going into Calgary and coming out with a win. Now you got to go up against Winnipeg in their barn, and then here for the home opener on the 21st.
I also think getting that win out west, because that's crucial too, because that's always been a challenge for the East to win games out in the West. So I think that gives you guys a little bit of a belief that you can beat a team in the West and on the road.
Well, there was pretty good confidence built up during training camp because the team looked really good in camp, and there's still that question. As confident as you can be, there's still that question: what's this going to look like when we're not playing against ourselves? When we're out of scrimmage situations, when we're out of drills, when we're out of Scully, and we're playing against a team that we're not familiar with for the most part, and a team that wants to beat us as badly as we want to beat them. And, it was a pretty good answer to that first question. So I think a lot of people are relieved that we're able to see, this group play the way that it did. At some points, you look at that first drive offensively. What was Mac? 9 for 9. White contributed on the ground and in the air, culminates with a touchdown. I think 5-6 players touched the football on that drive. So that was almost a perfect drive, and it showed what this offense is capable of. And the defense, a lot of veterans there, and they're still learning one another. And, I think a lot of people thought that the defense would be ahead of the offense and on basically every team this year. Maybe that was the case, but man, if this team defensively continues to get better and better, which I assume it will, this could be a really formidable unit by the end of the season.
Macbeth is not a guy who won a lot of games last year, but he played really well. Statistically, he was very strong. It kind of helps, doesn't it, to have a team around you? You had a lot of trouble last year because you didn't get a lot of help from the running backs, the defense, and all of a sudden now you come with a good defense and your running back starts making contributions. Quarterback starts to look better, doesn't he?
Well, it also helps the win-loss record when you don't have to go up and put up 45 points a game. Absolutely. And that in more than a couple of cases last year, that was what McLeod, Bethel Thompson in the offense, or James Franklin in that case, and the offense were up against. And it changes the offensive mindset. It takes away some of the things you can do. People say that look at the yardage he piled up in garbage time. Well, that was against a defense that was dropping an extra defensive back. Right. That's not easy to do sometimes, and still rushing 4 guys, sometimes 5. McLeod played better last year than I think a lot of people gave him credit for, even though his statistics were really good. And we saw him get up in the pocket, move outside the pocket, make really difficult throws, use the strength of his arm, use the touch, use his brain a lot to pick up what the defense was offering. And, was it a perfect game? Hell no. When you play a good team, you're not going to play a perfect game. And I thought all things considered, putting up 300 and whatever yards he did offensively, a couple of touchdowns, no interceptions, I thought he played exceptionally well.
He doesn't get enough credit for how well he rises to the challenge. Let's not forget that Franklin was the starting quarterback in a lot of people's minds, and Arbuckle this year, in a lot of people's minds, he would be the starter. So this is a guy who rises to the challenge, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not like Nick wasn't ready to go. It's more Coach Dinwiddie all the way through camp. His mandate was simple: if you have a little bit of a tweak, I don't want a 2-day injury to turn into a 2-month injury. So he erred on the side of caution. And, if Mac had to come out of the game for whatever reason on Saturday night, Nick was ready to go. He dressed. He was ready. But for safety's sake, I guess, more than anything else, and Mac picked up the offense really quickly. Nick knows it better than Mac does at this stage. The Argos have 2 guys capable, and Pipkin's not far behind them. Because he's got starting experience in this league as well. You've got multiple guys on this team with starting experience in the CFL, and you don't expect your quarterback to play all 14 games this year. If you do, you're lucky. They've got 2 guys right now who are more than capable starters. And, Hamilton may say they've got the best depth in the league in terms of a 1-2 punch at quarterback. Argos aren't too much further behind them.
Absolutely not. David?
No, I think you're very right in that. I mean, watching practice, all three guys were getting their opportunities to, show what they can do, even if it was against the scouts team or with the top unit. And you look at what happened to BC the other game. They were planning for Mike Riley to play. He couldn't play. They had to throw in Nathan Rourke, and I thought, considering the situation, he played very well. And then they tried to put Michael Riley, I should say, back in, and that you could tell he wasn't good enough, and with the injury he was dealing with, and then Rourke went back, and I think now we're starting to see in the CFL, as you mentioned, you need multiple guys, especially with the condensed schedule. I think that's going to play more of a factor than I think other people realize, and injuries are going to creep up, and you have to have that other guy ready to go. And I think Hamilton showed that, when Mazzoli went down, the importance of needing that second quarterback. And even in Calgary, when Bo Levi went down and Arbuckle had to step in, needing that second guy is becoming more and more crucial in this league.
Winnipeg needed 3 guys last year.
That's right.
So between the 2 Grey Cup finalists last year, one team desperately needed 2, one team desperately needed 3. We've got 3 here, and Bryant on the practice roster. So that's a pretty formidable group. And in this era where defenders are bigger, stronger, faster, and the contact is more severe. I mean, this football isn't a contact sport; it's a collision sport, and guys can go down with the smallest of things. I mean, you can throw a pass, and your pinky finger can hit a helmet, and you could be gone for a month. It's a very odd position where sometimes the most odd thing is going to happen to you, something that doesn't look like it's going to be a serious injury, and it's going to throw up screw up the way you throw. So it's a tough position, and the more the merrier. And the Argos are pretty blessed with depth at every position. And John Murphy told me in a conversation in the offseason and he's the vice president of player personnel, he wants this room to eventually look like the Argos room in the sort of 2012 to 2017 period, where you had Ricky Ray, and you had Cody Fajardo, and you had Trevor Harris, and you had Zach Collaros, and you had Jarius Jackson. You had all of these guys in the room, all of whom were capable of playing, where if one guy went down, it was next man up, and it wasn't that much of a drop-off. And that's the goal. And right now, I think the Argos are in a pretty good position in depth at the quarterback position.
In support of that, people should be reminded that coming out of Montreal camp, Pitkin was the starting quarterback.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, he started, and at times he looked really good, and then there seemed to be a regression. And Antonio Pipkin was, if I'm not mistaken, the first guy that we signed when free agency opened. He was a first-day guy. He was an early first-day guy, and I think he was the first guy we signed, and there's a reason for that. Ryan Dinwiddie sees what's there, thinks a little bit of coaching up can really help Pipkin, and he can be a really, really good quarterback in this league. He's shown at times he can be a good quarterback in this league, and they want to get him not only to the point where he was in Montreal, they want to kind of knock off some of the bad habits that maybe he had developed and make him into that starting quarterback. So it's not just a 1-2 punch here, it's a 1-2-3 punch, and I hope people don't forget that.
Of course not. And don't forget the Barker principle. You're always replacing the guy that you've got.
Yeah.
That's the reality of the Canadian Football League.
Yeah, you have to have a next man up. And, every team is going to go through injuries at some point of the season. And it seems every year one group really gets hit hard, where your offensive linemen are going to go down. You're going to end up with 3 guys down there, or your defensive backs, or your linebackers, or receivers. And the Argos are pretty fortunate where they've got pretty good depth at every position. So should one guy unfortunately have to go down, and that's the nature of the game, there's no real drop-off at any one position in terms of who's next man up.
David? Yeah,
no, and, especially – I think the age is a consideration too. I mentioned, Antonio Pipkin's 26. That's still very young for a CFL quarterback. So there's also has to be a little bit of development, because you have to think about not just this year, but future years as well. You got to make sure that you have that foundation stable going forward, and that's always something I think with the Argos. I know that Pinball wanted to make that, Michael Clemens wanted to make that very crucial in their building, is that this isn't a 1-year thing. This is something they want to sustain for as long as possible.
That's the goal. I mean, if you want to say, in the CFL, the Calgary way, if you want to say in the NFL, the Patriot way, where you have that sustained success for a long period of time. The Alouettes had it when Jim Pop was there with Tressman and Don Matthews, and the Eskimos had it, of course, in the 70s and 80s and 90s, where they just didn't miss the playoffs, and that's the goal here. The problem in Toronto has been Grey Cup, terrible team, terrible team, terrible team. Grey Cup, East Final, Grey Cup, terrible team, terrible team. It's been the real roller coaster, as opposed to Grey Cup team, East Final, playoff team, East Final, Grey Cup, East Final, playoff team, playoff team, playoff team, playoff team. And that's the goal. Every team obviously has the same goal, but yeah, the goal here is sustained success on the field and hope that translates into sustained success off the field.
I don't disagree with that, Mike, and I'm not contradicting you or going against what you said, but I think there's a lot of organizations there that would like to be able to say that in the past 7 years or 8 years, or make it, I guess, now 9, won the Grey Cup twice. I mean, we had two teams last year playing in the Grey Cup that were not champions for decades. So it's great that they want to go for consistency. Pinball has said that in his press conference when he came in. He said, I want to have a team that plays well every year. No one can disagree with that. But also, I don't like sometimes that people play down the Argonauts because they don't make the playoffs. Let's not forget that they've won a couple of Grey Cups. I've been to them. I've seen how the Argo fans have been excited and how thrilled they've been. Yes, both times it was a surprise. It wasn't anticipated, wasn't believed even, but still they have won championships. So yeah, it'd be great to take the next step and be great all the time. But I don't want to forget that they've been a pretty good team, pretty good to their fans as far as celebrating is concerned.
There's no question that the championships are important, but for sustained success for the team, you need the business side of things to sustain itself as well. And if you're going to go 4-14, good luck selling tickets after Labor Day, right?
Well,
seriously, if you get off, and every team in the league has gone through this, where you've got off to a terrible start in a relatively short season. It's not like it's 162 games where you're going to be able to get a base of fans paying the money over the course of that season. But if you start out the season 2-6 or 1-7, it's tough to sell tickets after Labor Day, especially in this market where you've got the Blue Jays, you've got TFC, you've got the Raptors and Leafs getting ready for their seasons at the end of the CFL season. So I mean, you need, when Mike says sustained success, he doesn't just mean on the field. That's a given.
Absolutely.
The goal is to win a championship every year, but if you can get that consistency where a 10-win season is a bad year, you're going to have people have more fun at the games and potentially come out a little bit more. And we saw that in Montreal. Montreal was the party spot in the CFL for a long time. And then they fell into some tough times win-loss wise, and attendance bottomed out. And that's what basically every team, Saskatchewan maybe in recent years excluded, every team faces that, where if you don't have success on the on the win-loss record, it's going to pay at the gate. And that's what a sustained success to the organization means: on the field, off the field, in the stands, in the community. And that's the goal. And everybody here is working hours and hours and hours a day to get there.
Yeah, no, there's no question that that's the case. I wasn't saying that at all, that you can get by the way they've been playing. Obviously not. But sometimes the negativity when it comes to Toronto, Mike, is severe. Like.
Oh, I've heard. I've been an Argo fan for 50 years. And, I've been in the market since 92, 91 a little bit, but 92 full time. And, every year it's just, you bang your head against the wall when you try to explain what a great game this is, and for people to just come down and give it an equal opportunity, to come down and say, hey, I can get into the game for $15, beer's $5. It's a cheap night out. We've got the best patio in the city, and to come down, enjoy the game, learn about the players a little bit. So, get that emotional attachment. You can watch, and maybe betting helps this because you get an attachment to the team. But if I'm going to go and watch a college football game between Oklahoma and Nebraska, I'm going to be intrigued because I love football. But if I have a rooting interest, I'm going to enjoy the game a little bit more. I don't like either one of those teams particularly, but if I were to become a Nebraska fan, all of a sudden those games mean a little bit more. So for people in this market who go, CFL, I don't watch it. give it a shot. Watch it. Become an Argo fan for a game. Just kind of learn about 2 or 3 of the players. Watch the game. Give it a chance. Then watch the second game.
Yeah,
and see if you get hooked. I think if you watch 4 games and give this product a chance, 4 games, you'll become a fan of the league.
David and I sit in as you know, we sit in the press box and we watched the games last year.
Statler and Waldorf, you're always there.
Yeah, it's hard, right? So basically, the thing is, and you're right. I just want to soft pedal the failures of the past for the Toronto Argonauts, because I don't want it to affect what people think about this year, because every year is a new year and this is another opportunity. What you're talking about, what I can relate to, and I know David, because we sit together and we talk sometimes about it, it's the games that they're not relevant at home that are the key. They've had some really, in the past, they've had some really terrible games at home. And if Mike Hogan convinces a dozen people to come to the game and then that's what they end up watching, you said yourself about the rooting interest. Well, if you're trying to get local fans in there, you're pretty much talking about Southern Ontario. You're pretty much talking about Toronto, Toronto football fans, and they basically played the way they did. You're not selling the game. You're 100% right.
If you were talked into coming, we had a decent crowd for the home opener last year.
Absolutely.
If you came to, or 2019. If you came to that and saw them lose by 50,
yeah.
You're kind of, I don't want to go through that again. That's why the on the field product needs to be there for the off the field product to sustain itself. And some of those recent losses in recent years just weren't acceptable. And God, I love Jim Pop, and I don't know if I'd have this job without him. I love Mark Trestman. I love Corey Chamberlain. But when some things like that happen, there's going to be a change. And the goal here is to not have those happen ever again. If one of those happens every 10 years, it's a fluke. Where one of those happens every season, now you got problems. And when we had 3 of those, I think in 2019, that can't happen. It just can't happen. And a lot of good people lose jobs when stuff like that happens, whether it be players or management types. And everybody in this organization knows that can't happen, especially in this market, because we have a lot of catching up to do.
There's no doubt that the guys you mentioned want to win. There's no doubt that they're great football minds. Ryan Dinwiddie comes in, and what brought him in? He had no experience as a head coach. That doesn't mean he doesn't have experience as a coach, because he did. He had a lot of that. What characteristics does he have? We're starting to see a little bit of evidence about his character, how he doesn't like to lose, how he's very passionate. What other things does he bring that may make this team as good as you guys hope it will be?
He's type A football. There's no question about that. He's got a great offensive mind. He spent a lot of time with the defense and special teams and training camp because he knows he's got to do that. He can't be one of those quote unquote offensive coaches that just doesn't care about the defense. He wanted to go make sure that he's not just the offensive coach. He's the head coach of this football team. So he brings an enthusiasm. He brings a great football brain, and the guys have really responded to him. And sometimes a coach can be a good X's and O's guy and not have that it factor in terms of motivation. He's got it. He's shown that to everybody in the organization. Guys want to play for him. And I think that was evident the way they reacted after the first win on Saturday night and the way they reacted to him.
Yeah, and how he interacts with the rest of the management team as well.
Exactly.
David?
No, I mean, in all the talks with Ryan, and right after the game, it was, we'll enjoy this win for the day, and then the mindset changes. I think that's, for a rookie coach, there's always, the want to, enjoy the moment, but he also understands that, he's coming into a very tough situation where they got 3 very tough games, and you can get caught in the mindset sometimes, but I think he understands just how important it is to keep the team roped in, especially given how long the layoff has been and how easy it is maybe to lose focus, especially when every game means so much this year.
And it's a difficult situation. Coming back from Calgary, it's a short week. Guys have the day off today, and they're right back at it. And they've got to go into Winnipeg, so it's traveling out west again, and they've got to play a team that had a couple of extra days off. Winnipeg played on Thursday. They don't have to travel. They've had a couple of extra days to prepare for the Argos. So going into Winnipeg is not going to be easy. And I think people, especially after week 1, I think most people who watch the league, if they had to put together a power ranking, would put Winnipeg number 1. So that shows you the task at hand. and the coaching staff knows that. The players know that. So regroup today. The coaches were in early this morning. I showed up at 7 o'clock, and the parking lot was full from the coaching staff getting ready. And man, it's not going to be an easy game, but Dinwiddie knows that. The players know that, and they're going to not leave any stone unturned to prepare for them.
There's no doubt that they're going to be ready. Winnipeg's going to be ready, defending Grey Cup champs, coming into Toronto. I think they might even remember what happened to them the last game. Remember, Mike?
Yeah, that was here. That game is in 2 weeks. We've got the back-to-back, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah. No, I understand.
Winnipeg,
But I'm just
Winnipeg this week. But yeah, the Jamal Campbell touchdown and the SJ Green game where he had, I think, 10 catches and 17 targets. And
yep.
The game-winning touchdown on essentially the last play of the game as McLeod was awesome in that game, and not only with his arm, but don't forget he was their leading rusher that game.
Exactly.
45 or 50 yards. So that was a hell of a game, and if we get a game that's that entertaining in Winnipeg and then follow it up with an equally entertaining game on the 21st at 4 o'clock when Winnipeg's here in our season opener. Tickets go on sale on the 12th. Can I get that in there?
Absolutely. When are they going on sale?
On the 12th.
Did you say the 12th?
On Thursday the 12th. Yeah, this Thursday. The single game tickets will be on sale.
Absolutely. David, I'll let you ask the last question. We have him on here longer than I said I would have him. We've had him a little longer, so you'll get the last question.
Just, quickly, after watching what Winnipeg did to Hamilton, I remember also what happened between Toronto and Winnipeg when Toronto was in Winnipeg a few years ago, how quick things can turn against the Blue Bombers. I guess that's probably the biggest challenge, is to not let the Winnipeg get all the momentum right away, because they can ride it pretty well.
Yeah, it's a loud crowd out there. They're boisterous. They love their Bombers out there, and riding the wave of the Grey Cup win a year ago and the victory over Hamilton, where they look pretty good. And the Oliveira story was a nice one. Hometown kid fills in for another hometown kid at running back and rushes for over 100 yards. They've got some good things going out there in Winnipeg, and now it's up to the Argos to go up and stop that momentum.
Isn't it fantastic, Mike, that football's back and now you're so busy? It's like the players, right? That first hit, even though it's tough, it's those tough hits that you really enjoy, that remind you you're here and why you do what you do.
I was busy anyway. It's just nice to see all the stuff that everybody does around here pay off on the field, as opposed to just kind of going, what if? Everybody's remained busy here, and I think the hard work that everybody behind the scenes has put in has really paid off, because we have a very entertaining football team.
Yeah, March to game day, Argos again this week. It'll be a lot of fun. And Mike, really, thank you so much for being on the program and talking to us about the team and how they're doing, and reminding us that on the 12th, the tickets go on sale for the next game. So we really appreciate you. Good luck to the boys. You guys are always very good to us. David and I appreciate the hospitality the Argos give us more than anything. So thanks for that. And of course, thanks for being here today.
My pleasure. Anytime, guys.
That's, of course, Mike Hogan, the play-by-play guy for the Toronto Argonauts. Okay, David, our producer will let you go. You could just turn it off, Mike, and go to work. I know you're trying to get the job done. There you go. Okay, so yeah, no, he said he'd be on for 10 minutes, and that's how generous Mike Hogan is. He didn't complain at all. He stayed on for a few extra minutes, and that all worked out great. It was fun.
Very much so. I guess we can move on to talking about some of the games.
Yeah, let's start with Hamilton and, of course, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. We all know that it was the Grey Cup replay. The fans in the stands were fully vaccinated. The Ticats had fuel to play well, of course. Revenge was on their mind. The Bombers had the unveiling of the signage, including the 2019 Grey Cup win. So the scene was set for what should have been. And I got to say, I was a little disappointed. The Ticats did not look that impressive. They almost seemed lackluster. And the biggest disappointment for me was Simone Lawrence. He did not look like Simone Lawrence.
I was going to say that, it very much reminded me of the Grey Cup. It was almost like watching a repeat of that performance. Yeah, Simone Lawrence, he had a sack. He led the team in tackles, but it just seemed like, when the defense needed a leader to kind of step up and try to wool things together, they were beat up pretty a lot, especially by that offensive line in Winnipeg. that like that. I always say that Winnipeg has, I think, found the right formula in that you got to be good up front on the offensive line and really good up front on the defensive line. You gotta be physical. You gotta make it. You gotta wear down the other team. They certainly did that. I think the biggest disappointment for me, I thought Jeremiah Mazzoli, he came out really strong. He had that first touchdown to Jeremy Ackland. Jalen Ackland. But what really disappointed was Brandon Banks. This is a guy that I think he didn't play well in the Grey Cup. I expected he was going to come into this game with a little more gusto, a little more of a desire to be a difference maker. He had 8 catches for 77 yards, which is not bad, but we know that he is capable of almost double that total. And when Hamilton really needed to get things going offensively, he was just not there. There was just nothing for him to really give for them.
Things derailed for him when he got that penalty where he accidentally hit the Winnipeg player in the head with the ball. The Winnipeg player's head was between Brandon's hand when he threw the ball and the referee on the other side. Totally unintentional, but it seemed to he unraveled after that.
Yeah.
He was very emotional. He was pacing the sidelines. This is a great player who sometimes tends to get a little emotional, and it's I wish that he had a way of learning to deal with that, because he's a much better person than that. What people are seeing is not Brandon Banks. They're seeing an emotional side like most people. It gets out of control a little bit, and then it affects your performance. And I felt that really bothered me that affected him that way, because he deserves so much better.
He does, and again, we've seen it from him in the past, as you mentioned, and sometimes he's risen above it and he uses it as fuel to have a good game, and sometimes it's just tough, especially when you're on the road and you're dealing with a hostile crowd. I mean, Winnipeg had the most fans. Pretty sure them in Saskatchewan had the most fans at their games. That's not an easy atmosphere to try to calm yourself when things are just so riled up. And I thought that Mazzoli just wasn't at his best either, and that doesn't help either when your quarterback isn't hitting on. He I don't know how many attempts Banks had thrown at him. He had 11 targets and 8. Like, he had the ball come his way. It wasn't like in past years where he just wasn't getting the ball and that was making him frustrated. It's just that Mazzoli just wasn't on his game, and
it's about mistakes, David. He threw 2 interceptions. If you look at his yard, he churned up 242 yards in passing. That's a good night. It's those 2 interceptions, and when you compare it to Zach Collaros, who only threw for 217 but threw no interceptions and threw 2 touchdowns. So, it's about ball security, and Hamilton's got to do that.
And also the completion percentage. Mazzoli completed 58% of his passes. That means that you're putting your defense in a very tough spot by having constantly, giving the ball away, not only with the interceptions, but on the 2 and outs. And what did Winnipeg do? They didn't just rely on the quarterback. Their running back. I mean, Mike mentioned Brady Oliveira.
Yes.
Making the start for his hometown team, 22 carries for 126 yards. I said this on Twitter during the game. How many CFL teams give the ball to their running back 22 times in a game? I said only one, and it's Winnipeg, and it's usually Andrew Harris.
Yeah, well, that's kind of why, right? If you're handing the ball to Andrew Harris and then you build a system around him, and if you go in to replace Andrew Harris, and if you have a little bit of talent, a little bit of ability, escapability, and able to catch the ball once in a while, you're going to get over 100 yards with the Winnipeg offense.
And it's a very I was wondering how the system would change without Paul LaPolice. I think it pretty much was the same, because Collaros didn't have to, as you said, he didn't have to throw it a lot, but he was very efficient. And Kenny Lawler was very good in that game. With he's already halfway to his totals from 2019 in one game, so it's very efficient in that they will pick their spots on when they want to go deep with it. They don't just do it all the time. They don't just throw the home run ball all the time. They're very calculated. Collaros only had 18 completions. It's not a lot in the grand
Yeah,
scheme.
yeah, but a lot of the completions were extensions of a drive because of his legs. His arm was great. He was making some great tosses. He was really finding every window and every crack he could find. He took whatever the defense gave him. And let's not forget, the reason he only threw 28 times is because he only had 28, 28 targets, because he just there was Hamilton's a great defense, for goodness sake. Let's remember the other side. But he was so escapable. He escaped every time. He ran around. He made the defense get tired of the Hamilton Tiger Cats. They had him, and then he'd slip out and make a great play like he did in the Grey Cup, like he did in the last 5 games of last season. This guy is a great quarterback. When we interviewed him and when he showed up for the Argos, when he's had his cup of coffee here or a cup of tea or whatever his favorite beverage is, I regretted on behalf of the Argos that he left. I'm surprised that they let him go. This guy is one of the premier quarterbacks of the past decade, without a doubt. He has done nothing but win games he's not supposed to win. He did that for the Argos when he replaced Ray, and he did it for Hamilton, and he did it for Saskatchewan a little bit while he was there, and he continues to do it in Winnipeg. This is a guy whose health has been the only issue.
I think what we saw from him, not only last in 2018 when he joined Winnipeg, but this year, is you can sit in that pocket as much as you want, but you either got to be willing to take a hit or you got to get that ball out quick. I think when, as you mentioned, him getting out of the pocket is him showing that I got to take myself out of that potential to get clobbered by a defensive lineman who wants to make sure that if I get hit, it's going to hurt. And yeah, I think you're totally right. I know the Argos really want to keep him, but when your general manager that brings you in gets removed before even that contract. I know there was a contract offer. It's just that the contract offer was with the other general manager. The new general manager said, "Look, we gotta get something for you. You get," and they did him a favor by, getting him to Winnipeg so that he can show that what he can do. So, I think, and he said he was very critical about his performance after that win. He says we got a lot of work to do, and that's dangerous. When you had a pretty good game in terms of you didn't make that many mistakes, but you see the room for improvement. So Winnipeg is going to be a very interesting team. I thought they were going to be like, middle of the pack in the West. If that offensive line and that defense is playing like it is, maybe a little bit better than I predicted.
Let's be clear too. One of the biggest problems with quarterbacks in the Canadian Football League right now is finding a really good one, and then having to deal with the contract you got to give him. Look at Riley. Look at Bo Levi Mitchell, and I think Collaros will be in the same class. The more money you pay a quarterback, the less money you have to give somewhere else. And that's the problem that BC had to fight last year. You give a guy $750,000 as a quarterback in the CFL, that doesn't leave much money in a salary cap that's only $5 million.
Exactly. You kind of hope that the quarterback's good enough that you can get, I wouldn't say cheap talent, but you can bring in more
cost effective.
Rookies. I always say rookies in the CFL do not make that much. Or you tell a receiver you want to do well, come play for the best quarterback in the league, and some will take less because they can jumpstart that to more money with another team down the road. So there is an economic investment you are making with a quarterback like that, but at the same time, as you mentioned, you are handicapping yourself when it comes to building the depth behind them. And
Absolutely. What you pay one guy, you can't pay someone else. So that's just the reality of the cap, and it's a hard cap system. Well, it's not as hard as it is, let's say, in the National Hockey League. There's fines to be paid if you go over, all that kind of stuff. And that information comes out later. The CFL deals with that.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, the advantage the Argos have, in my opinion, is they have 2 quarterbacks who I think are as good as any in the league. I really do think Arbuckle and Macbeth are as good as any quarterbacks in the league. Yes, any, even Riley, even Bo Levi Mitchell, even Collaros. I say that because the difference is so little, but the contract is half. So now you can you can pay a really good offensive lineman to protect him, so that I'm just using this as an example, that can protect him and make him that much better. And that's why the cap is so important. And that's why that dance that you have to do is such a key. And that's why a lot of people said, well, Riley, they paid him too much in BC. Where are they going to get the money for his offensive line? Where are they going to get the money for his receivers? I didn't mention Trevor Harris, the same thing. In the Canadian Football League, you get to be really good, you get paid a lot of money, or you get let go. That's the problem with the Canadian Football League because of the cap.
Exactly. And, when you look at, I guarantee Claros is not making as much because of his injury history, and you got to make sure that you can protect him and that you can get guys behind him. And they have a lot of other parts of that roster that make a lot. Willie Jefferson does not cost a pretty penny.
Right.
Andrew Harris does not cost a pretty penny. But that's what you're able to do when you are able to get the quarterback at the right number.
Absolutely. That right number is really important. And insert our favorite comment. Allow us to know what the players are getting paid, please.
We're going to keep beating that drum.
Hey, that drum, that's the important drum that we beat here. I think it's only right that the contracts everybody should know what the contracts are. Pretty much the important people who need to know, the Players Association and the players, they know what everybody gets paid. So what's the difference if the fans know? I mean, are they worried that people are going to get on players because of how much they get paid? They got lots of reasons to get on players, and a lot of them are none of any good. But, just give them something. I think that information would be very helpful and a great idea. So in full circle, Claros is a guy who, along with Mazzoli, two quarterbacks that, really good, both same kind of style, strong arm, mobile. But in this one, Claros won it. And so Winnipeg, repeat winner. They won when the season ended, and they won when the season began. This was a defensive Titanic struggle for the most part, 19-6 the score. The next game we're looking at, of course, is the BC Lions at Saskatchewan Roughriders, who jumped to a 32-0 lead. 32-0, David. The score ended up a lot closer than that.
When I was watching that, and you're just like, oh, BC, you thought they were going to try to get over the issues they had last year in 2019. And, I knew Saskatchewan was going to be good. And I'm like, oh, they're proving me quite right. I mean, Cody Fajardo when you start off with, 14 points in the first half, and then you in the first quarter, then 18 in the second quarter, you're just like, oh, this is going to get very ugly. And the worst part of it is, BC going into that game, Michael Riley was not 100%. He apparently just didn't feel right in warm up. So, hey,
he didn't throw. Nobody saw him throw a ball long.
No,
not in practice, not in training camp, not in pregame.
That's an issue, right? And we know Michael Riley likes to air out that ball. So, guess what, Nathan Rourke? You're making your first ever professional football start against the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and we know how hard it is to go up against them like that. I felt bad at first for Nathan Rourke because of that, and then I think
he held up well.
He held up really well. I mean, they had to put in Michael Riley at one point just to kind of, I think, calm the nerves, calm the team down a bit, and he. Even with the injury, 17 of 24 for 203 yards. That's not bad. Who knows? I mean, he would have been much better if he was healthier. And then Nathan Rourke,
obviously, yeah.
I think what that allowed BC to do was kind of calm down a bit, get their feet under them, and then Nathan Rourke came in. He gave them a chance at the end. If it wasn't for that interception late, they had some missed opportunities in that game, and I feel like that they probably. I mean, they had they had two missed field goals, which guess what? Two missed field goals is the difference between you winning and you losing in some cases. And
absolutely,
I think Nathan Rourke showed that there's a little bit of promise there, and I think a lot of Canadian fans were rooting for that because I mean we always want the Canadian quarterback to do well.
Well, the problem with Riley was that he wasn't getting much spin on the ball, and he wasn't, and for that reason, he wasn't throwing it long. So he didn't have real control over the ball. A lot of his passes, even the ones that were completed, were short. It required players to come back to the ball. So, the biggest thing here for me was what impressed me was BC's defense, and Nick Benavides has done a great job with the defense there. As much as Saskatchewan scored, it was less about the defense, more about basically field position.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you don't have to. I mean, Fajardo, you look at that game, 230 yards. That's not a lot of yards, but it's where you're getting the ball, right? They had two. I know that Saskatchewan had 2 interceptions in that game. They got 2 interceptions. Starting field position can mean so much in the CFL, especially if you're looking at long drives that wear out a defense, and then your offense comes out and you get a 2-and-out. Your defense is just going, oh, like we just wanted a chance to catch our breath. And that's I think I always say the field position is so crucial in the CFL because it puts more onus on special teams to either pin them deep or don't give up the big play and big yards. Don't take the penalties either that pushes your team back or gives the extra yards where it happens quite often. But yeah, I think when I look at Saskatchewan and I look at Winnipeg, those are 2 things they thrive on is field position.
And let's not forget, Saskatchewan finished first last year.
Yes, they did, and I think people were. I think people were again sleeping on them this year. I know some are not big believers in Cody Fajardo because he did well, but they thought he could do better.
He's another one of those quarterbacks that doesn't put his team in trouble. I think that's the key. No. Like we were talking about, if a quarterback's given an opportunity to be productive. I just wanted to mention this because this is a statistic that it still burns in my head. Before Saskatchewan had their 4th possession, they scored 4 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense, does it? Well, that's because they had an interception that went for a touchdown before their 4th possession. So all their points was scored immediately in the game. So I appreciate the lack of giving up by the BC defense. They did a great job that way.
I think 2 things about that quickly is it allows your offense to set into a rhythm. You're not forcing anything and trying to come back. But it also sometimes I think it gives a little bit too much to the other team. They can make adjustments, and it's the adjustments you have to make. I think Saskatchewan didn't do well with the adjustments in the second half. Like BC, that defense held them to 1 point in the second half. I think when you have a lead like that, I know you score 32 points in the first half, 33 at the end, but you score 32 points in the first half, you should have more than 1 point in the second half to show for it.
Absolutely.
So that's something they need to work on too.
Absolutely. Listen, let's skip the Argo game. We talked about a lot about the Argos at the beginning with Mike Hogan. Let's make sure we get Ottawa. They beat Edmonton 16-12. That was when I watched this game, my jaw dropped because Edmonton jumped out to a good start, and then the defense of the Red Blacks kicked in. La Police's defense was incredible. They did a great job. And Abdul Kaneh. He is still a great player. He's one of the reasons why they won that Grey Cup back then.
He was the reason why they won that game because Edmonton we talked about how Ottawa lacked talent, this and that. You can make up for a lack of talent on offense with a good defense. That defense showed up big time. They made a person who was a non-believer out of me. I'm giving them a little bit more credit now. And even on that last play, Edmonton, give them credit. They kept it close, even with going up against a tough defense. And that tackle on that end play showed, I think it really made that a statement performance for that defense because they could have easily allowed that touchdown and they kept that guy out at the 1. So that shows a lot. Their offense, Ottawa's offense still is an issue for me. I mean, Nichols only had 71 yards. In the CFL, your quarterback throws 71 yards. That's a lot of pressure you're putting on your defense. They stepped up this time. They really did. But I don't know how often you can rely on your defense to be that good and only allow 12 points. Like, I don't know how many CFL defenses can do that consistently day in, day out. So that's going to be an issue for me. But in this week, going up against arguably one of the top offenses in the West, a top 5 quarterback in the league, who he had 333 yards, but he had 3 interceptions and no touchdowns. We talked about the touchdowns and interception ratio. That's what did Edmonton in that game, in my opinion.
Yeah, it wasn't it wasn't a great performance. He himself, Trevor Harris, said in the post game that I have to play better. He felt he let the team down. He's a guy who lets the game go to his heart. He's very, he wants to be a leader, and he tries to lead by example. And this team, I think the best play by an Edmonton player was not during the game. Did you see? I'm trying to remember his name. Shy. I'm looking here because I have it here. Shy. Shy Ross. The Oreo cookie dunking.
That was
Did you see that
to come out of the. Oh, I mean, it was the most viral clip I think the CFL has had in a really long time. Between that and the Red Blacks lineman who chugged a beer.
Yes.
After a touchdown. I love those sort of things. It just shows that these are great athletes. Great athletes. They can do a lot of great things. So yeah, that was really great. And I think we should give credit to the Red Blacks too for trying that reverse on the punt.
Half a yard. It was no more than half a yard. Hey, it wasn't even a yard. It was like maybe a half a yard.
I think the ball should have to travel a full yard in order for that to be a thing. I personally think
I like your thinking.
I understand you don't want to move. It's not the ball's not supposed to move forward, but if it's a half a yard, I think it has to go a full yard if you really want to. That's really close. That's a little too close, I think, for the refs to have to determine as well. Or I really was hoping that play would stick because that's what makes the game fun. The special teams mean so much in the CFL, so to have that creativity means so much. It was really unfortunate that play had to be called back, and
it really is.
But because it was the most exciting play of that game, and it was between that and the last play of the game, that's what made that game really special because it's fundamentals. It's trying to, it's about playing good, sound football and creative football too.
And remember, folks, when you're watching the Canadian Football League, if there's a touchdown scored, there's always a review. There doesn't need to be a challenge. No. Challenge isn't required. A touchdown and I think a change of possession as well. They're automatically reviewed.
The NFL is doing that as well too.
Yeah, it's obvious it should be done, right? Anytime points are scored, it should be reviewed, especially a touchdown. Well, we got a couple of minutes left. Let's. Did we miss anything with the Argo game that wasn't mentioned by Mr. Hogan?
I think I'll just say the Bo Levi Mitchell comments where he said that we gave the game to them. I think I understand not wanting putting the onus on your team and saying that we didn't play well enough, but to say that the other team pretty much was handed the victory, I think that's I wouldn't say it's a slap in the face, but it's not giving them enough.
It's cocky. It's cocky.
Very cocky.
Yeah. But it's Bo Levi Mitchell. That's who he is.
Yeah. So that's
very confident. And it's the way to motivate. It's a way to motivate. So let's look at the 4 games coming up next week. BC at Calgary, Toronto at Winnipeg, Montreal at Edmonton, Hamilton, Saskatchewan. Obviously, we follow the Argos, so that's going to be a very important game. But the one that interests me the most, I want to see how Hamilton does against Saskatchewan. Hamilton's going to have the game film that they know how to be successful against Saskatchewan, and they know what makes Saskatchewan really good because of that game that they played.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the game. And, I think the East, every game is going to is very crucial because we want 1 and 2 are usually the big battles in the East. We'll see if the third team in Montreal is going to be good enough, or maybe it's Ottawa that'll be good enough. We'll see.
Well, if Ottawa, because of the good coaching that they have, and it looks like they put together a better team this year. Nichols didn't play that well, and they won. So if Nichols can get his game together, that's going to be a much better team than we saw against Edmonton. And Edmonton's a prohibitive favorite to win the Grey Cup. A lot of people are picking them to win. So exactly. Ottawa beat them, and Hamilton can't come back to the East 0-2.
Exactly. You're very right.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. Well, David, it was really fun. It was great to have Mike Hogan on.
I mean, Mike is a great promoter of the CFL, so it's always good to have him get his opportunity to promote it, especially with us.
Yeah, he's always been a CFL guy. Well, he's David Morassutti. For Mike Hogan, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching CFL Talk, airing live Mondays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For CFL Talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, please check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thank you for watching, everybody. Until next time.